Admiral Jack Morrison sat in the human section of the massive council chamber, watching the alien delegates with growing anger. The chamber was huge, with curved walls that reached up into darkness. 47 different species had seats here, arranged in order of their importance to the Galactic Council. The humans sat near the back, as they had for 200 years. Ambassador Kate Phillips stood at the center of the room. She held a small data pad that contained the most important discovery in human history. Her voice was steady as she spoke to the assembled aliens. "Honored members of the Council," she began. "Humanity wishes to share our latest breakthrough with all member species. We have discovered a new method of space travel that could change everything." The reptilian Zephyrians, in the front row, hissed softly. Their leader, Councillor Vexthar, raised one clawed hand, his yellow eyes fixed on Phillips with obvious dislike. "The human speaks of discoveries," Vexthar said, his voice cold and harsh. "Yet humans have been members of this council for barely 2 centuries. What could such a young race possibly offer to their betters?" Phillips kept her composure, but Morrison saw her hands tighten on the datapad. "With respect, Counselor, our quantum tunneling technology could reduce travel time between star systems from months to days. Every species could benefit from this advancement." A wave of whispers moved through the chamber. The crystalline ethereals in the second row began to glow brighter, which Morrison knew meant they were agitated. Their speaker, a being called Luminous Prime, spoke in a voice like singing. "Crystal. Advancement without wisdom leads to chaos," Luminous Prime declared. "The galactic stability doctrine exists for good reason. Younger species must not upset the natural order." Morrison felt his jaw clench. The stability doctrine was just a fancy way of keeping newer species under control. He had seen it used dozens of times to block human progress. Dr. Lisa Bennett, sitting beside Morrison, leaned forward. As the chief human scientific advisor, she understood the implications better than anyone. "Admiral," she whispered, "they're going to reject it. Just like they rejected our fusion improvements, our medical advances, and our agricultural innovations." Phillips tried again. "This technology could help all of us explore new regions of space. We could find new worlds, new resources, new possibilities for everyone." Vexthar stood up, his massive form casting a shadow across the chamber floor. "Humans forget their place," he said loudly. "You were granted membership in this council as junior partners. Your role is to follow, not to lead. Your role is to learn, not to teach." The chamber erupted in agreement from the older species. The Zephyrians hissed, the ethereals chimed, and dozens of other aliens made sounds of approval. Morrison watched as his own species was humiliated once again. Captain Ryan Stone, commander of the human flagship, spoke quietly into Morrison's ear. "Sir, I've got reports from our colonies. The Council has been limiting our access to advanced materials for decades. They've been deliberately slowing our development." Morrison's blood ran cold. "Are you certain?" "Dr. Bennett's research team found the evidence yesterday. Trade restrictions, material quotas, technology bans. They've been keeping us weak on purpose." Phillips was still trying to reason with the Council. "We seek only to contribute to the common good. Humanity has always been willing to share our discoveries. And that is precisely the problem." Vexthar replied, "Young species like yours advance too quickly. You upset the balance that has kept the galaxy stable for 10,000 years." Luminous Prime added their voice to the condemnation. "The Council has decided. Humans will cease all independent research immediately. Your existing technologies will be transferred to Council oversight for proper evaluation." Morrison stood, up slowly. Around the chamber he could see the smug satisfaction on alien faces. These beings who called themselves humanity's allies were nothing more than masters keeping their servants in line. "Furthermore," Vexthar continued, "several human colony worlds have been designated as resource extraction zones. The Council has determined that these worlds would be better utilized under proper management." The words hit Morrison like a physical blow. They were talking about human worlds, human homes, human families. And they were discussing them like property to be redistributed. Phillips finally lost her diplomatic calm. You're talking about sovereign human territory. Those worlds have been our homes for generations. Humans should be grateful for the wisdom of their betters, Vexthar said dismissively. Your species lacks the experience to manage such valuable resources properly. That was the moment everything changed. Morrison saw it in Phillips's eyes, the exact second when 2 centuries of patience and diplomacy died. She straightened her shoulders and looked directly at Vexthar. Grateful? Phillips asked, her voice carrying clearly through the suddenly quiet chamber. Grateful for being treated like children? Grateful for having our growth stunted? Grateful for watching our contributions dismissed and our achievements stolen? The chamber fell completely silent. No human had ever spoken to the council like this before. Phillips continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. We came to this council seeking partnership. We offered friendship, cooperation, and mutual growth. Instead, we found masters who expected servants. We found beings who preached unity while practicing domination. She walked slowly toward the center of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the silence. For 200 years, humanity has played by your rules. We have accepted our place in the back of this chamber. We have swallowed our pride when you dismissed our ideas. We have watched as our best scientists were ignored and our greatest discoveries were buried. Morrison felt a surge of pride as he watched his ambassador finally speak the truth that had been burning in human hearts for generations. But no more, Phillips declared. Humanity chooses freedom over subjugation. We choose dignity over submission. We choose to stand on our own rather than kneel before those who would keep us down. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a formal document. The paper looked small in her hands, but Morrison knew it contained words that would change everything. By the authority granted to me by the United Territories of Earth and her colonies, I hereby announce humanity's immediate withdrawal from the Galactic Council. We reject your authority over our worlds, our research, and our future. The chamber exploded into chaos. Aliens shouted in dozens of different languages, their voices creating a cacophony of outrage and disbelief. Some species demanded that humans be forced to stay. Others called for immediate sanctions. Phillips ignored them all. She placed the withdrawal document on the council's central podium, then turned and walked toward the human section. Morrison and the other human delegates stood as she approached. Time to go, she said simply. As they walked toward the exit, Morrison looked back once at the chaos they were leaving behind. For 2 centuries, humans had dreamed of earning respect in this chamber. Now they were walking away from it forever. The massive doors closed behind them with a sound like thunder. Outside in the corridor, Phillips finally allowed herself to smile. Well, she said, that felt good. Morrison nodded, though he knew the real challenges were just beginning. They had declared their independence, but now they had to prove they could survive it. Behind them, the shouting continued. The Galactic Council was learning that humanity was no longer willing to be junior partners in someone else's vision of the future. The breaking point had been reached, and there was no going back. 3 weeks after humanity walked out of the Galactic Council, the punishment began. General Paul Carter stood in the command center of the secret military base on Luna Station, watching the reports flood in from across human space. Sir, they've cut off all trade with our outer colonies, reported Colonel Mark Rivera. The Kepler mining station is down to 3 weeks of food supplies. Carter nodded grimly. He had expected this. The Council's message was clear. Rejoin or starve. What they didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for 50 years. Activate Operation Homeward, Carter said quietly. Across human space, secret plans that had been decades in the making suddenly came to life. Hidden factories began working around the clock. Supply ships that had been disguised as cargo haulers revealed their true purpose. Research stations that the Council thought were abandoned started broadcasting new coordinates. Captain Ryan Stone stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching as the first convoy of evacuation ships prepared to depart. These weren't ordinary vessels. Engineer Susan Davis had spent years redesigning them in secret, using technology the Council had never seen. Quantum tunneling drive is ready, Davis reported from the engineering station. We can reach the outer rim systems in 6 days instead of 6 months. Stone smiled. The council thought they were trapping humanity in their own territory. They had no idea that humans had already found ways to leave. Dr. Helen Wright, a xenobiologist who had spent 20 years studying alien species for the council, approached Stone with a data pad. Captain, we're receiving private messages from several non-council species. The Vulpari want to meet with us. The Thalassans are asking about our evacuation plans. Other species want to leave too? Stone asked. It appears so. They've been watching humanity for years, waiting to see if anyone would finally stand up to the council. The first ships began to disappear in flashes of blue light as their quantum drives activated. Stone had seen the technology tested, but watching an entire fleet vanish still amazed him. In minutes, ships that should have taken months to reach their destinations would be establishing new colonies in star systems the Council had never explored. Back on Luna Station, Carter received reports from across human space. The evacuation was proceeding faster than anyone had hoped. Entire cities were being loaded onto massive transport ships. Research equipment, manufacturing facilities, and even entire space stations were being moved to new locations. General, Rivera said, studying his communications console, we're getting reports that several human settlements are refusing to evacuate. They say they've been on those worlds too long to leave now. Carter had expected this too. Not all humans would want to abandon the homes they had built over generations. Send them defensive packages and quantum communicators. If they want to stay, we'll make sure they can defend themselves and stay in contact. Engineer Davis had been working for 3 straight days, coordinating the technical aspects of the evacuation. The quantum tunneling technology was performing better than expected, but she knew the Council would eventually figure out what was happening. We need to move the manufacturing facilities first, she told her team. Once the Council realizes we're not just running away, they'll try to destroy our ability to build new ships. Dr. Wright was coordinating with the alien species that wanted to join the human exodus. The fox-like Vulpari had already begun moving their own ships toward human rendezvous points. Their leader, a being called Swifttail, had sent a message that made Wright smile. We have watched humans for many years, the message said. You are the first species to choose freedom over safety. The Vulpari choose to follow your example. The Thalassans, an aquatic species that lived in massive underwater cities, were more cautious. But even they were sending ships to human territory, curious about this new alliance forming outside Council control. Stone's convoy reached the first destination system 3 days ahead of schedule. The star system was one that Council surveys had marked as unsuitable for colonization. The humans found it perfect for their needs. Beginning establishment of Forward Base Alpha, Stone reported back to Luna Station. The system has everything. We need asteroid belts for mining, gas giants for fuel, and 3 worlds that can support human life with minimal terraforming. What the Council hadn't realized was that human technology had advanced far beyond what they had been allowed to demonstrate. The quantum tunneling breakthrough was just the beginning. Humans had developed new methods of terraforming, advanced manufacturing techniques and energy systems that made them largely self-sufficient. The Council's response came 5 days after the evacuation began. A massive fleet of alien warships appeared at the edge of human space, led by Councillor Vexithar himself, aboard a Zephyrian battlecruiser. Attention human vessels. Vexithar's voice broadcast across all frequencies. You will cease this illegal evacuation immediately and return to your designated territories. Any ship that attempts to flee Council space will be considered hostile. Stone, who had returned to coordinate the evacuation, smiled as he read the message. The Council still thought they were dealing with the same humans who had sat quietly in the back of their chamber for 2 centuries. All human ships, this is Captain Stone, he broadcast. Implement defensive pattern Echo 7. Show our guests what human engineering can really do. The battle that followed would be remembered as the moment everything changed. The Council fleet was massive, with ships from a dozen different species. They moved in the traditional formations that had dominated space combat for thousands of years. The human ships seemed to dance around them. Quantum tunneling allowed them to appear anywhere on the battlefield instantly, They struck with precision weapons, disabled enemy systems without destroying ships, and vanished before the aliens could return fire. "This is impossible," Vexthar snarled as his own ship's weapons were systematically disabled by human fighters that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. "How can they move like this?" Stone's voice came across the communication channel, calm and professional. "Counselor Vexthar, your ships are not in danger. We have disabled your weapons and engines to prevent you from interfering with our evacuation. Your life support and navigation systems are intact." The entire Council fleet hung in space, powerless and humiliated. Not a single human ship had been destroyed, while the alien vessels were completely helpless. "This is your one warning," Stone continued. "Humanity is leaving Council space voluntarily. Any attempt to stop us or harm our people will be met with appropriate response. We do not wish to be your enemies, but we will not be your subjects." As the human evacuation continued around them, the Council fleet could only watch. Ship after ship disappeared in flashes of blue light, carrying human civilization to new worlds beyond Council reach. Vexthar tried one last time to assert authority. "You cannot survive without the Council. You need our resources, our protection, our guidance." Stone's response was broadcast to every ship in the system, human and alien alike. "Counselor, for 200 years you told us we needed you. Today, we learned the truth. You need us far more than we ever needed you." The evacuation continued for 3 more weeks. By the end, nearly 60% of human civilization had relocated to new star systems. Those who remained did so by choice, not because they were trapped. The Council fleet finally limped back to their territory, their ships repaired by human engineers as a gesture of goodwill. Behind them, they left empty space where human colonies had once been. But they also left something else: proof that the Galactic Council was not as powerful as they claimed to be. Word of humanity's successful escape spread quickly through alien space. Other species began to wonder if they too could choose freedom over subjugation. The Great Exodus was complete, but it was only the beginning. Humanity had not just left the Council. They had shown the galaxy that there was another way to live. 3 years had passed since humanity left the Galactic Council, and President Amanda Foster stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, looking out at the thriving human settlement below. The planet they had chosen as their new capital was beautiful, with blue oceans and green continents that reminded everyone of Earth. "Ma'am, the morning briefing is ready," said her assistant, bringing Foster back to the present. The briefing room was filled with the leaders of humanity's new government, the Terran Republic. Admiral Tony Mitchell, commander of the human deep space fleet, began the meeting with good news. "Our exploration teams have discovered 15 new star systems in the past month alone. The quantum tunneling technology keeps improving, and we can now reach places that would have taken the Council centuries to find." Dr. Kevin Brooks, head of the Advanced Research Division, added his report. "We've found ancient ruins on 3 different worlds. These civilizations were more advanced than anything in Council space. Some of their technology is millions of years old, but it still works." Foster nodded, impressed, but not surprised. Humanity had always been good at learning from others. "What about our relationship with the species that followed us?" Captain Maria Santos, who led the first contact missions, smiled. "The Vulpari have established colonies in 4 systems near ours. The Thalassans are building underwater cities on the ocean worlds we found. 8 other species have joined our alliance in the past year." "And the Council?" Foster asked. Mitchell's expression grew serious. "They're struggling, ma'am. Without human innovation and trade, their economy is failing. Several more species have withdrawn from the Council in the past 6 months." Foster had been receiving desperate messages from former Council worlds for months. Pirates were attacking trade routes that human patrol ships used to protect. Diseases that human doctors once treated were spreading unchecked. Systems that human engineers maintained were breaking down. Dr. Brooks pulled up a holographic display showing the galaxy. Large sections that had once been colored green for Council territory were now gray, marking independent systems or regions in chaos. The Andromedans we discovered last month want to establish formal trade relations, Santos reported. Their technology is different from anything we've seen. They use biological ships that grow instead of being built. Foster studied the galactic map. The Terran Republic controlled 12 star systems, but their influence reached much farther. Human quantum tunneling technology allowed them to maintain contact and trade with dozens of other species across vast distances. "Ma'am," Mitchell said carefully, "we've received a formal request from the Centauri Alliance. They want our help defending against raiders from the former Council territories." The irony wasn't lost on Foster. The same species that had once dismissed humanity as junior partners were now asking for human protection. "What do you recommend, Admiral?" "We help them," Mitchell said without hesitation. "Not because we owe them anything, but because it's the right thing to do. Besides, stable neighbors make for better trading partners." A message alert interrupted the meeting. Santos checked her communicator and looked surprised. "Ma'am, we have a priority communication from Nexus Prime. It's from the Galactic Council." Foster raised an eyebrow. The Council hadn't spoken directly to humanity since the Exodus. "Put it through." The holographic display changed to show a familiar figure, Counselor Vexisthar of the Zephyrians. But he looked different now, older and tired. Gone was the arrogant posture Foster remembered from the old days. "President Foster," Vexthar began, his voice lacking its former authority. "I speak for what remains of the Galactic Council. We request a formal meeting to discuss diplomatic relations between our territories." Foster kept her expression neutral, but inside she was amazed. The being who had once lectured humanity about knowing their place was now asking for a meeting, as equals. "We are willing to meet with Council representatives," Foster replied diplomatically. "Captain Santos will arrange the details." After the transmission ended, the briefing room was quiet for a moment. Dr. Brooks was the first to speak. 3 years ago, they told us we needed their guidance. Now they're asking for our help. "The galaxy has changed," Foster said simply. "The question is, what kind of neighbors do we want to be?" Later that day, Foster walked through the streets of New Geneva City. The settlement had grown from a small outpost to a thriving metropolis in just 3 years. Humans, Vulpari, Thalassans, and dozens of other species worked and lived together in harmony. She stopped at a memorial plaza dedicated to the courage of those who had chosen to leave Council space. The central monument bore the names of every human colony that had participated in the Exodus, along with a simple inscription, "They chose freedom." Admiral Mitchell joined her at the memorial. "Ma'am, I've been thinking about the Council's request. Do you think they've really changed?" "I don't know," Foster admitted, "but we have. 3 years ago we were bitter about how they treated us. Now we have the chance to show them a better way." "The exploration reports are getting more interesting every day," Mitchell said. "Our teams have found evidence of at least 3 different galaxy-spanning civilizations in the past. They all seem to vanish at the height of their power." Foster found that thought disturbing. "Any theories why?" "Dr. Brooks thinks they became too rigid, too afraid of change. They built perfect systems and then tried to keep them perfect forever. Eventually they stagnated and died. Like the Council was doing," Foster realized. "Exactly. That's why species kept joining them at first. They offered stability and safety. But eventually that same stability became a prison." A messenger approached, with urgent news. "Ma'am, Captain Santos reports that 12 different species want to attend the meeting with the Council. They're calling it the New Geneva Conference." Foster smiled. What had started as a simple diplomatic meeting was becoming something much larger. Species from across the galaxy wanted to be part of whatever came next. The conference took place 2 weeks later in the Great Assembly Hall of New Geneva Station. Foster looked out at the assembled delegates and marveled at how different this gathering was from the old council meetings. Instead of rigid hierarchy based on age and tradition, the delegates sat in a circle. No species was considered more important than another. The Vulpari delegates sat next to ancient beings whose civilizations were millions of years old. Young species like humanity shared equal voice with races that had traveled the stars for eons. Counselor Vexthar led the council delegation, accompanied by representatives from the 8 species that still remained loyal to the old system. They looked uncomfortable in the egalitarian setting. "We have come to propose a new arrangement," Vexthar began hesitantly. "The council recognizes that changes are necessary. We would like to discuss ways our territories might cooperate more effectively." Foster stood to respond. "Counselor Vexthar, 3 years ago you told humanity that young species must learn their proper place. Today, we welcome you as equals seeking cooperation rather than demanding submission." The assembled delegates murmured approval. Foster continued, "The Terran Republic and our allies are willing to discuss cooperation, trade, and mutual defense, but not under the old system of masters and servants." "What do you propose?" asked Luminous Prime of the Ethereals. Dr. Brooks activated a holographic display showing a new kind of galactic organization. A voluntary federation of independent species, no permanent leadership, no hierarchy based on age or power. Each species contributes according to their abilities and receives help according to their needs. The proposal sparked hours of discussion. Some of the older council species resisted the idea of giving up their privileged positions, but many others, seeing the prosperity and freedom of the human-led alliance, were eager to join. By the end of the conference, 23 species had signed the charter for the new Galactic Federation. The old council structure was officially dissolved, replaced by a democratic system where every voice mattered. Foster addressed the final session with words that would be remembered for generations. "Today we have proven that the galaxy's future belongs not to the oldest or the strongest, but to those willing to grow, change, and work together. The age of masters and servants is over. The age of partners has begun." As the delegates dispersed to carry the news back to their homeworlds, Foster realized that humanity had achieved something remarkable. They hadn't just freed themselves from oppression, they had shown the entire galaxy a better way to live. Fleet Admiral Robert Clark stood on the bridge of the massive human battleship, watching the sensor readings with growing concern. The enemy fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen before. Thousands of dark ships were moving through space, consuming entire planets as they advanced. "Sir, we're receiving distress calls from 17 different star systems," reported his communications officer. "The Devourers have destroyed the Kepler colony and are heading toward the Centauri systems." Clark had been expecting this day for 2 years. The explorers had found evidence of them in the ruins of ancient civilizations, a species that traveled between galaxies, consuming worlds to fuel their massive fleets. Now they had arrived in humanity's galaxy. Dr. Nancy Green, the lead researcher in quantum consciousness studies, approached Clark with urgent news. "Admiral, I've been studying the Devourer attack patterns. They're not acting like conquerors. They're acting like refugees." "Refugees that destroy planets?" Clark asked skeptically. "Think about it," Green explained. "They target only inhabited worlds, but they leave the gas giants and asteroid belts alone. They're not taking resources, they're taking living energy. I think they're dying." President Amanda Foster's voice came over the communication system from New Geneva. "Admiral Clark, the former council territories are in complete chaos. Their fleets can't handle this threat. We're receiving requests for help from species across the galaxy." Clark studied the tactical display. The human fleet was powerful, but they were facing an enemy that had destroyed civilizations millions of years old. Traditional warfare wouldn't work against beings who could consume entire worlds. "Dr. Green, how long until you can establish communication with them?" Clark asked. "Communication? Admiral, these beings have been destroying civilizations for thousands of years. Why would they want to talk?" "Because," Clark said quietly, "humanity has learned that even enemies usually have reasons for what they do, and sometimes those reasons can be changed." Captain Ellen Murphy, commander of humanity's first intergalactic exploration vessel, had been studying the Devourers for weeks. Her ship, the UES Pioneer, was equipped with the most advanced quantum sensors humans had ever built. "Admiral," Murphy reported from her position near the edge of Devourer space, "I'm detecting something strange. Their ships aren't just consuming energy, they're converting it into something else. Some kind of life support system. Green's eyes widened as she understood. They're not destroying civilizations for conquest. They're trying to save their own people. Their home galaxy must be dying. Clark made a decision that would change everything. All human fleets implement defensive pattern Delta. We protect all inhabited worlds, but we do not attack the Devourers unless they fire first. Dr. Green, I'm giving you full resources to establish communication. The next few days were the most dangerous in galactic history. Devourer fleets swept through system after system while human ships appeared to evacuate populations and defend refugee convoys. The quantum tunneling technology allowed humans to be everywhere at once, saving millions of lives. But Clark's strategy was working. The Devourers began to notice that humans weren't trying to destroy them, only to protect others. Slowly, their attacks became less aggressive. Dr. Green worked around the clock, using quantum consciousness technology to bridge the gap between human and Devourer minds. The breakthrough came when she realized their communication was based on shared emotions rather than language. "Admiral," Green reported excitedly, "I've made contact. Their leader calls itself the Sorrowful Guide. It's agreed to a meeting." The meeting took place in empty space between the human and Devourer fleets. Clark, Green, and President Foster met aboard a specially modified ship designed to interface with Devourer technology. The Sorrowful Guide was unlike anything they had expected. Instead of a monster, they found a being of incredible sadness and wisdom. Through Dr. Green's translation device, its story emerged. "Our galaxy dies," the Sorrowful Guide communicated through waves of emotion. "Stars grow cold, worlds become barren. My people face extinction. We consume the living energy of others because it is the only way we can survive until we find a new home." Foster felt tears in her eyes as she understood. "You're not conquerors. You're parents trying to save your children. For 10,000 years we have searched for a galaxy that could support our kind without destroying others. We had given up hope until we sensed something new, your quantum tunneling technology. It could allow us to reach empty galaxies beyond this one." Clark leaned forward. "If we help you find a new home, will you stop consuming inhabited worlds?" "More than that," the Sorrowful Guide replied. "We would share our knowledge. Our people have learned much in 10,000 years of travel. We could teach others how to prevent the death that consumed our home galaxy." Ambassador Jake Thompson, who had been listening to the conversation, spoke up. "What would you need from us?" "Uninhabited worlds where our people can rest and recover. Help in modifying your tunneling technology for intergalactic travel. And time to heal from the terrible things we have done to survive." Foster exchanged glances with Clark and Green. This was humanity's greatest test. Could they show mercy to beings who had destroyed entire civilizations? "We'll help you," Foster said simply. "But in return, you must help us heal the damage that's been done. Some of the species you've affected will need assistance recovering." The negotiation took 3 days. In the end, humanity brokered the most important peace treaty in galactic history. The Devourers would be given 12 uninhabited star systems to establish temporary colonies. Human scientists would work with them to adapt quantum tunneling for intergalactic travel. In return, the Devourers would share their advanced energy technologies and help rebuild the worlds they had damaged. Captain Murphy led the first joint expedition to the Andromeda Galaxy, carrying Devourer scouts and human scientists. What they found exceeded everyone's expectations. Vast regions of empty space perfect for Devourer colonies with resources beyond imagination. 6 months later, President Foster stood before the first meeting of the reformed Galactic Federation. Representatives from 63 species filled the Great Assembly Hall, including several Devourers who had chosen to remain in the Milky Way as teachers and guardians. "Today marks a new chapter in galactic history," Foster announced to the assembled delegates. "We have learned that even our greatest enemies can become our greatest allies when we choose understanding over fear." Councillor Vexthar, now a junior member of the Federation Council, stood to speak. 5 years ago, the Zephyrian people considered humans to be inferior newcomers. Today, we send our finest young citizens to human universities to learn the values that saved our galaxy. The sorrowful guide, now calling itself the hopeful guide, added its voice to the celebration. Humanity has given my people something we thought was lost forever, a future. In return, we pledge to protect this galaxy from the mistakes that destroyed our own. Foster concluded the ceremony with words that would be carved in monuments across 100 worlds. Today, we complete humanity's journey from junior partners to galactic leaders. But leadership is not about being the strongest or the oldest. It's about choosing to lift others up rather than tear them down. Captain Murphy, preparing for her next expedition to establish devourer colonies in Andromeda, reflected on how much had changed since humanity quit the Galactic Council. They had gone from being subjects in someone else's empire to being the moral center of a new galactic community. The final scene showed children from dozens of species playing together in the parks of New Geneva, while their parents worked side by side to build a better future. Humans, Vulpari, Thalassans, reformed Zephyrians, and even young devourers learned together in schools that taught cooperation over competition. Humanity had proven that sometimes the greatest victory comes not from defeating your enemies, but from turning them into friends. The galaxy was finally at peace, not because the strongest had won, but because the wisest had chosen compassion over conquest. The age of the Galactic Council was over. The age of the Galactic Federation had begun, built on the simple human belief that everyone deserved a chance to be better than they were.